The war was supposed to be clean. That's what the Galactic Accord had promised when they outlawed humanity from frontline combat 2 centuries ago. No blood, no chaos, no primitive carnage. Just drones, AI-controlled fleets, and tactical suppression. The rules were strict, and for good reason. No species wanted a repeat of the Arabus campaign. That was the last time humans were allowed on the battlefield, and it ended with the skies of planet Brathik burning for weeks, entire oceans evaporated by nuclear flame, and 3 species wiped from existence. No one talked about it anymore. Not out loud, anyway. But in the dark corners of alien diplomacy, there was a whispered saying, "If you want to win, don't call the humans. If you want everyone dead, do." And yet, here we were again. Captain Silas Wren stood at the edge of the drop bay, his armor heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't worn it in decades, not since Earth had agreed to the Passive Participation Pact. Humans could advise, train, even build weapons, but not fight. That part was clear, until now. The Zarn Dominion had broken the truce, not just once, not just by accident. They had launched a full assault on the Tri-Core Peace Nexus, a neutral diplomatic hub. 16 species lost ambassadors. 2 entire moons were vaporized. The Accord hesitated, arguing in endless loops about rules, sanctions, and moral boundaries. And while they hesitated, the Zarn took 3 more systems. So finally, quietly, desperately, they reached out to Earth. "Limited human deployment," the message had read. 1 battalion, no civilians, containment objective only. But Silas knew what they really meant. They didn't want containment. They wanted vengeance, or salvation, or maybe both. He turned his head slightly as the bay doors opened behind him. 10 soldiers stepped in, all silent, faces pale. They were the last of the Earthborne, trained in the old way, the kind of warfare that gave nightmares to entire planets. Most of them hadn't fought in years, but none of them had forgotten. War like that doesn't leave your blood. It just sleeps. "Wren," a gruff voice came over the comms. It was Commander Drex, a Reptary diplomat who used to spit at the sight of humans. Now he begged them. "We've lost orbital control. Their cruisers took out our defense grid. If we don't break the landing zone in the next 6 hours, they'll take Delve Prime." Silas tapped the side of his helmet. "Understood. We're en route." He didn't offer comfort, no encouragement, just cold facts. That was the human way when it came to war. No fluff, no mercy. The troopship rattled as it tore through the atmosphere of Delve Prime. The planet was scorched, dotted with plasma strikes and the twisted husks of burning ships. Silas's visor filtered the smoke, highlighting movement in the valley below. Zarn units, spiny, insect-like creatures armed with heat rifles, were crawling over the wreckage like ants swarming a dead beast. "Drop zone clear in 5, the pilot said. Silas turned to his squad. "No prisoners, no broadcasts, no survivors. Make them remember why they banned us." Then the floor opened beneath them, and they dropped like meteors. The moment his boots hit the ground, Silas felt it return. The heat, the pulse, the rage. For years they'd told him to bury it, that human aggression was a disease, that instinct was outdated, dangerous, but now it was a gift. The first Zarn didn't even scream before his body was split in half by a tungsten blade. The second had time to lift his rifle before a sonic charge burst his chest open. The rest started retreating, but they were too late. The humans weren't here to fight. They were here to unleash. Wren's HUD filled with kill confirmations. His team moved like ghosts, brutal and efficient. Every shot was a message. Every body left behind was a warning. And somewhere deep in the orbit above, alien commanders watched in silence, remembering. because the battlefield didn't forget. And neither did the humans. By the time the sun rose over Delve Prime's smoldering horizon, the valley was silent. Not silent like peace, silent like fear. Smoke curled from the charred remains of what had once been a Zarn forward base. Now it was just broken steel, severed limbs, and scorched soil. The air stank of ionized blood and melted exoskeletons. But the humans didn't flinch. They moved through the devastation with the calm of those who had seen worse. Done worse. Sergeant Marlowe stepped over a twitching Zarn cadaver and let out a low whistle. Damn, we've been grounded too long. Wren didn't answer. He stood at the edge of the ridge, scanning the eastern canyon through his visor. Movement, he said flatly. Reinforcements, 10 clicks out. How many? Too many to count. Good. Marlowe cracked his neck and reloaded. Thought they were supposed to surrender after the first hit. Isn't that how the Zarn do it? They don't know us yet, Wren said. But they will. In orbit above, aboard the Reptari flagship Unity's Roar, panic was building. Ambassador Drex watched the live combat feed with wide, unblinking eyes. How are they moving so fast? They aren't just fast, replied Admiral Sheetarn of the Kurlathi. They're deliberate. They don't waste a second. They don't hesitate. They don't care. Drex swallowed. We were told humans would act under controlled, strategic guidance. Limited engagement, not this. This is slaughter, Sheetarn finished grimly. Drex turned away from the screen. We made a mistake. No, Sheetarn growled. The mistake was thinking we could control them. Back on the ground, the second wave hit hard. Zarn transports screeched across the canyon edge, their legs kicking up dust as they deployed fresh troops. Hundreds of them, clawed and armored. Energy blasts screamed through the air, cutting into stone and metal alike. But the humans didn't pull back. They advanced. Wren's voice crackled through the comms. Shield line, funnel them in. The humans formed a V formation, classic Terran siege tactic from the Third World Wars, forcing the Zarn into a narrow kill zone. Once they were trapped, Wren triggered the perimeter mines. Boom! Bodies flew. Black blood sprayed across the rocks. The Zarn screamed in confusion, but the humans didn't even look shaken. Their expressions were like stone, focused, emotionless, terrifying. Private Kira snapped off a shot that pierced straight through 2 enemy skulls. This is insane, she muttered. They just keep coming. They'll stop, said Corporal Rios, once they understand what we are. Wren's voice came in again. No survivors. Burn everything. I want the fear to spread faster than their orders. It wasn't a tactic. It was a statement. Later that night, in a blood-soaked clearing deep behind enemy lines, Wren stood over a captured Zarn officer, its body riddled with cuts but still breathing. Barely. It croaked something in its clicking tongue, trembling as it looked up at the human leader. Wren removed his helmet slowly, letting the alien see his eyes. Cold, unmoved. You thought we were myths, he said. Stories your ancestors told to scare hatchlings. The Zarn gurgled a response, half plea, half whimper. Wren knelt beside it. Now you remember why they banned us. Then he pulled the trigger. At the edge of the warfront, in a Zarn command chamber beneath the crust of Delve Prime, General Cuthar watched the reports pour in. The holograms showed total unit loss in multiple sectors. No survivors, no distress calls, just silence. They're not soldiers, one of his advisors whispered, horrified. They're monsters, Cuthar bared his fangs. Number worse. He turned to the central display. Footage of a lone human walking through smoke and fire, like some demon from forgotten prophecy. They're human. The sky above Delve Prime burned red, not from the sun, but from the dozens of cruisers reduced to molten debris. Ash drifted like snow over the broken wastelands, falling quietly over wreckage and corpses. The humans didn't stop to mourn. They moved through it like ghosts, silent, efficient, terrifying. But in the command tent set up in the remains of a demolished alien outpost, Silas Wren was more focused than ever. The battle hadn't ended. It had mutated. "Intel says they're rallying 2 sectors east," said Marlowe, pointing to a flickering holo map. 3 full regiments. That's 30,000 units. Mostly Zarn, but we're seeing hired mercenaries too. Slavers, deserters, even a few Krell-born mutants. "They're scared," Wren said without looking up. "They're throwing numbers at a problem they don't understand." Rios laughed bitterly. "They understand it just fine. That's why they're panicking." Private Kira, younger and still shaken despite the victories, sat polishing her rifle. Her hands trembled slightly. "Why did they ban us, sir? Really? I heard stories, but was it really that bad?" Wren's eyes hardened. "You think this is bad?" He stood, walked over to a nearby console, and brought up classified footage from a century ago. The Arabus campaign. The last human war. The one that got them kicked off the battlefield forever. The video began with grainy footage of Earth forces storming alien bunkers. Then came the orbital strikes. Not on military targets, on cities. Civilian populations wiped out in minutes. Precision nukes, neurovirus deployment, drone swarms designed to strip flesh from bone. In the background, audio captured the screams. Not of enemies, of terrified children. Entire civilizations burned in the name of victory. Kira's face turned pale. "We did that?" Wren didn't flinch. "We won." That was the truth no one liked to admit. Humanity hadn't been banned because they were weak, or unstable, or disobedient. They were banned because when humans went to war, they didn't stop at winning. They ended things. News spread like wildfire across the Galactic Accord. Human battle group flattens Delve Prime Sector. Zarn forces in full retreat. Treaty rules violated, human war crimes expected. But the most read headline was the one no diplomat dared say aloud. They're back. On the diplomatic moon of Karshai, panic set in. Ambassadors from over a dozen species gathered in a crisis chamber, arguing over the footage, over the scale of destruction, over what the hell Earth was thinking. "They lied," screamed Minister Yava of the Lortech. "They promised us restraint." "They were restrained," replied Drex grimly. "You don't know what they could have done." Shitarn stood slowly. "We made them believe they were less than what they are. But we forgot something important." "Which is?" someone snapped. The Admiral turned towards the central screen, which still showed Wren's cold face behind his battle visor. "They don't fight for conquest, or even survival. Humans fight like they're punishing the universe." Down on Delve Prime, the 3rd Zarn assault came under cover of a sulfur storm. They thought the weather would slow the humans down, fry their optics, choke their breath. It didn't. The humans fought blind, not because they had better gear, but because they didn't care. They used sound, instinct, fire. It was close combat now. Blades, blood, screams so loud they echoed across the canyons. Wren moved like death itself, every strike a lesson in why humanity had once ruled the battlefield. He took 2 hits to the chest, shrugged them off, and kept going. Marlowe lost an arm and still killed 6 Zarn before passing out. Rios walked through a burning transport just to drag out a wounded squad mate. Kira, no longer the nervous rookie, planted a det pack in the heart of the Zarn command crawler and detonated it while laughing. It wasn't madness. It was legacy. Hours later, as the storm finally cleared, a single Zarn ship limped off-world, its sole mission now to carry a message. The humans are back, and they are exactly what you feared they'd be. The escape ship landed on the outer rim colony of Gortel, crashing through its docking bay with sparks and screeching metal. The hull was half melted, its crew nearly dead from radiation and trauma. Medics rushed to help, only to recoil when they saw what was inside. The lone surviving Zarn soldier couldn't speak. His vocal sacs were ruptured, his limbs barely attached. But his eyes, those wide, blood-filmed alien eyes, told the story no one wanted to hear. They came with war reports, scrambled transmissions, footage so disturbing that the colony's defense council went into immediate lockdown. Every image told the same tale. Humans didn't just win on Delve Prime. They taught a lesson. Within days, 10 more planets declared neutrality. Entire mercenary guilds disbanded, and on the Accord's central station, the question whispered across every hall, every backdoor meeting, every sleepless chamber was the same. Who unleashed them? Silas Wren sat alone in the ruins of the enemy stronghold, helmet off, face coated in ash and blood. A cold wind swept through the shattered walls, stirring the silence left behind after victory. Not far from him, Kira crouched near a pile of destroyed Zarn drones, cleaning her rifle in silence. "Do they know yet?" she asked. Wren didn't look at her. "Who?" "The ones in orbit. The ones who sent us here, thinking we'd play nice." He took a long breath. "They'll know soon enough." Behind them, smoke still rose from where the third wave had been annihilated. No prisoners, no weapons salvaged, just charred earth and broken metal. It wasn't a battle. It was a warning carved into the planet. The squad was quiet now. Fewer jokes, fewer words, not because they were afraid, because they were remembering what it meant to be part of this, what they were. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Eternal Consensus, Earth's diplomatic delegation sat in full silence as the Accord raged. "You violated Article 9, bellowed Ambassador Tresk of the Veladrin. "You agreed your soldiers would never be deployed for direct warfare." "They weren't deployed," said Earth's envoy calmly. "They volunteered. That's a technicality." "No," the envoy said, leaning forward. "That's humanity. You gave us a rule book. You expected us to stay tamed. And when you got desperate, you came begging for help. Now you're angry that help came with a cost." A hush fell over the chamber. Earth's representative straightened his cuffs. "You don't ban a species from war because they're weak. You ban them because they're too damn good at it." The silence was thick. Then a voice from the back spoke, slow and cold. "We should have finished Earth when we had the chance." The delegate didn't blink. "You tried, and now you remember why that was the last mistake you ever made." Back on Delve Prime, the humans were regrouping. Reinforcements were offered. Non-human allies, supplies, even orbital cannons. Wren declined most of them. "We don't need an army," he told command. "We are the weapon." Satellite scans showed enemy fleets gathering again, this time bigger, nastier, more desperate. The Zarn had rallied allies, paid off warlords, unleashed things that had no names. But none of that mattered. Marlowe, one arm replaced with a prosthetic already stained from battle, stared at the sky. "They're throwing everything at us." "They think it'll make a difference," Kira added. Wren smirked. "They still think this is about winning. It's not." "What's it about, then?" He glanced across the field of corpses. "It's about making sure no one ever forgets us again." As darkness settled once more over the battered world, one message pulsed through every Zarn transmission, encoded in fear. The humans are not soldiers. They are war, wearing skin. The Coalition called it Operation Black Dusk, the largest multi-species strike force in over a century, 80 warships, 600,000 troops, biomechs, neuroswarmers, planetary disruptors, all descending on Delve Prime with a single objective: erase the humans. It wasn't a mission. It was a mass grave in the making. At least, that's what they thought. In the War Council aboard the Zarn Dreadnought Unmaker's Will, high-ranking commanders gathered around glowing maps, each pulse showing human positions, each dot a proposed impact zone. "They're outnumbered," said General Cuthar, mandibles twitching. "Their supply lines are cut. Their reinforcements have stalled. We strike now, and we end them." Across the table, a silent Kurlathi elder leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "They won't fight to win. They'll fight to make us regret ever standing on the same ground." Cuthar hissed. "They bleed like any other." The elder looked him dead in the eyes. "You mistake bleeding for breaking." Down on Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood among his squad as the clouds shifted. It wasn't a storm this time. It was a sky full of enemy ships. "They're coming hard," said Marlowe, wiping grime from his brow. "I'm talking orbital strikes, heavy crawlers, sonic splitters, the whole damn zoo." Kira stared up at the sky, then turned to Wren. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" "I was counting on it," he said. "Counting on being surrounded?" "Number counting on them being stupid enough to think that matters." The humans had prepared in silence. Over the past 48 hours, they'd vanished into the canyons, set traps in the riverbeds, rigged the cliffs with seismic charges. They turned Delve Prime into one giant grave, wrapped in camouflage and malice. They knew they wouldn't win by standing still. They would win by making the enemy wish they never landed. The first drop pods came fast, sleek, armored, loaded with elite Zarn death squads. They touched ground and exploded, rigged soil, buried plasma mines, booby traps inside their own LZ. Panic spread immediately. Commanders screamed for answers, but there was only one reply. A single broadcast, hijacking every comm frequency. Silas Wren's voice. "You should have left us in peace." What followed wasn't war. It was hell. Humans struck from shadows, appearing and vanishing like nightmares. Whole squadrons were buried alive in landslides triggered by sonic bursts. Krellborn berserkers were lured into tunnels and incinerated by flamethrowers fed through air ducts. Orbital ships tried to provide cover fire, but the humans had mapped enemy satellite positions and used them to redirect their own beams into friendly units. It was sabotage with surgical cruelty. By the end of the first day, 30% of the strike force was dead. By the second, half were retreating. By the third, no one would answer comms anymore. In the wreckage of an enemy crawler, Marlowe leaned back against a twisted steel wall, blood soaking through his vest. His artificial arm sparked weakly. "You know what this is starting to feel like?" he wheezed. Kira dragged herself beside him, lip split, cheek burned. "Don't say it." "Arabus. This is Arabus all over again." Wren sat nearby, hands bloody, eyes hollow. "No," he said. "Arabus was rage. This is something worse." Kira blinked. "Worse than rage?" Wren nodded slowly. "This is clarity." As night fell on Delve Prime again, the Coalition fleet began to scatter, not because they were ordered to, but because fear has a voice, and it was speaking through the humans. Across the galaxy, quiet rebellion sparked. Neutral planets withdrew from the Accord. Mercenaries broke contracts. Even Zarn defectors began begging for protection from Earth's wrath. Because it was no longer just a battlefield, it was a message, and that message was burning itself into the stars. You should have never brought them back. 2 solar cycles after Operation Black Dusk fell apart, the Galactic Accord issued an emergency transmission. Universal alert. Human military units no longer recognizing command protocol. Stand clear. Do not engage. Do not approach. It wasn't an order. It was a warning, because the humans weren't answering calls. Not from diplomats, not from command, not even from Earth. They had gone dark. And in that silence, the galaxy finally began to understand. Humans weren't here on assignment anymore. They were here because someone let them out. In the ashes of the eastern ridge of Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood alone, overlooking a valley filled with enemy dead. The only sound was the wind, whispering across shattered armor and burned bones. Behind him, Kira limped over the rocks, one leg wrapped in synth fiber, her face hollow but hardened. "No reinforcements," she said. "Command's not even answering." Wren didn't look at her. "They're not going to." "You think they abandoned us?" "They didn't abandon us," he said flatly. "They lost control of us." He wasn't wrong. Back on Earth, global media was under lockdown. Governments argued behind closed doors. Protesters flooded streets demanding answers. Why were soldiers still active? Why weren't they being recalled? But the real question was one nobody dared speak. What if they don't want to come back? Far across the galaxy, in a hidden Accord think tank deep within the asteroid belt of Kylar Zix, 12 species gathered in desperation. All of them high command, all of them terrified. "They've decimated 5 sectors," a Vorthian analyst cried. "We estimate less than 60 human soldiers remain active on Delve Prime. 60. And yet we've lost over 200,000 combined forces." "They're not soldiers," Drex said quietly, staring at the screen. "They're something we tried to bury and forgot to fear." "We have to kill them all," snarled General Qatar. "Nuke the planet, glass the soil, we cannot let them survive." "And what do we do when Earth responds?" another asked. Qatar hesitated. We hope they don't." Drex turned to the others. "You don't get it, do you? They're not waiting for orders. Not anymore. They're not fighting for Earth. They're fighting for something older." "Which is?" Drex didn't blink. "Vengeance." That night, Wren and his unit sat in the remnants of a collapsed dropship. They didn't speak much anymore. There wasn't much to say. Marlowe was gone. Blew himself up to collapse a canyon on a Zarn crawler convoy. Rios hadn't made it out of the last blitz. His helmet still sat beside the fire, scorched and cracked. Kira cleaned her rifle with one hand and clutched her ribs with the other. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. None of them did. "Why are we still here?" she finally asked, staring into the flames. Wren didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small, battered device, an old Earth datapad. No connection, just files, memories. He tapped it once, and a video played. A Zarn ship orbiting Earth, civilians screaming, fire raining down from above, and a single girl, maybe 10, running through the smoke before being vaporized in a blast. Kira's breath caught in her throat. "That was New Amsterdam," Wren said quietly. "Before the truce, before they made Earth promise to stay peaceful. We buried 1 million bodies before they even offered us a seat at the table." Kira looked at him, eyes wet now. "They made us bury our rage, bury our grief, and then they dared to act surprised when it came back up." The next day, another Zarn general surrendered. Not to Earth. Not to the Accord. To them. He approached the human camp with hands raised, head bowed, and no weapons. You win," he stammered. "We'll leave. Delve Prime is yours. Just please, stop." Wren stepped forward. "It was never about the planet." "Then what do you want?" the general cried. Wren's voice was low and final. "To make sure you never forget who we are." And then he turned away. Didn't kill him, didn't have to. The galaxy was already dying from the memory alone. Delve Prime no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a warning. Once green continents were now blackened scars. Entire oceans had boiled dry under failed orbital strikes. From above, the planet looked as if a clawed hand had raked across its surface. The few remaining satellites showed only silence. No enemy formations, no moving fleets. Just wreckage. The humans weren't attacking anymore. They didn't need to. Now their very presence was an act of war. Far above the ruined world, a quiet emergency summit took place aboard the Accord Citadel, deep in the Lambda sector. Every major species attended, though none met each other's eyes. The room reeked of fear and sweat. "Delve Prime is dead," whispered a high-ranking official of the Yulin. "We lost over 250,000 lives, 46 billion in infrastructure, and all to stop 60 humans. 52, someone corrected. We confirmed another 8 dead last rotation." "Does it matter?" snapped Drex, eyes bloodshot and voice fraying. "They're not a squad anymore. They're an infection." Si Tarn, the old admiral who once doubted Earth, now stood shaking as he leaned against the holotable. "If this spreads, if they go beyond Delve Prime, we won't be able to contain it. Not militarily, not politically, not morally." There was a silence before the Ark ambassador spoke. Her voice was hollow. "So we bury it." "Bury what?" "The entire planet." The plan was simple in its cruelty. No more diplomacy, no more failed battles, no more warnings. The Coalition would deploy a Gravlance, a prototype doomsday weapon developed in secret, into Delve Prime's atmosphere. It would collapse the planet's gravity core and implode the world from within. No nuclear fire, no survivors, just silence. It would be ruled an accidental core destabilization, a tragic end to a brutal conflict, and it would erase the last remaining humans on the battlefield. But humans aren't known for letting plans go as expected. On Delve Prime, Silas Wren stood in the ruins of what had once been the Zarn's strongest fortress. Its walls were cracked open, and inside, the last few survivors of his squad had gathered. Kira was there, barely holding together. A few others. No medics, no supplies, just willpower and grit. Wren had intercepted the transmission hours earlier. He knew what the Coalition was about to do. "We're not leaving," he said, voice low. Kira coughed, her voice raspy. "We've already won. Let them do it. Let them bury this place. It's what they've always wanted." Wren shook his head. "We don't die quietly." She looked up at him, something flickering behind her eyes. "So what now?" Wren reached into the dirt beside him, pulled out an ancient transmitter, a relic from a time when Earth didn't ask permission to speak. He clicked it on. "This is Captain Silas Wren of Earth's last battalion. You think you can erase us. You think fire and silence will make us disappear. But here's the thing about humans. We never vanish quietly. We become stories. We become nightmares. You bury us, and we grow in the dark." He paused, looking up at the crimson sky. "Go ahead. Kill us. But understand this. Your children will wake up screaming our names, and their children will curse the day you forgot what we were." Then he dropped the transmitter and walked out of the stronghold. No one stopped him. No one could. Hours later, the Grav Lance activated. A column of white light pierced the sky. The ground cracked, the core shuddered, the skies screamed, and Delve Prime began to die. But before the planet crumbled, one last transmission escaped into deep space. The old transmitter's signal, primitive, unencrypted, raced across stars, picked up by civilian colonies, abandoned satellites, even ancient probes long thought lost. It was Wren's voice, and now the entire galaxy had heard it. Delve Prime was gone, not bombed, not scorched, not conquered, just erased. The Gravlance worked exactly as designed. The core collapsed inward, folding the planet into itself like paper under fire. No debris, no wreckage, nothing left to recover. To the public, it was ruled an accident, a core destabilization event. To the diplomats, it was a tragic consequence of prolonged warfare. To the soldiers who survived the campaign from orbit, it was something else entirely, a mass murder. But there was no one to charge, no one to blame, because the ones responsible didn't leave fingerprints, just silence. And beneath that silence, a growing fear. On a desolate listening post on the edge of Carthan space, a lone technician stared at her console, eyes wide. "Commander," she whispered, "you need to see this." Her superior leaned over her shoulder. At first he thought it was a glitch, an old Earth-style radio ping bouncing between relay stations. Static. Nothing. But then the static cleared, and Wren's voice echoed again. "You can bury a battlefield, but you cannot bury the memory of what it cost you. We are the species you banned because you feared what we could do. And now, you remember." A second later, the transmission cut. But it wasn't the only one. Across a dozen systems, similar messages began to surface. Same voice, same tone, different words, different warnings. Someone, or something, had copied Wren's last speech, fractured it, spread it across the stars. Back on Earth, chaos brewed behind locked doors. The Global Defense Council sat in stunned silence as reports rolled in from every quadrant. Pirate fleets surrendering without engagement, smugglers abandoning entire sectors, military convoys refusing to pass through any area flagged formerly human combat zone. The most dangerous weapon in the universe was now memory. An admiral slammed his fist on the table. "We told them to contain it. We told them to be careful." "They were careful," another said. "They were precise. That's the problem." The room fell quiet again. Because the truth was undeniable now. Earth didn't lose control of its soldiers. The soldiers chose to leave Earth behind. Some say Silas Wren died on Delve Prime. Others say he escaped through an old orbital launcher and now lives in the void, watching the stars he once burned. Kira. She's a ghost story now. A whisper told to young mercs who think humanity was just another warlike race. They say she left a trail of markers across abandoned battlefields, symbols etched into stone and metal, an old Earth sigil, the ancient mark for home. The galaxy didn't understand it, but it made them afraid. 50 years later, a cargo ship crashed on the edge of a forgotten system near the wreck line of old Delve Prime. The rescue team that went in never came back, except for one. He came back without his crew, covered in blood that wasn't his, whispering the same words over and over again. They're still out there, waiting. And across the stars, in dark bars, war rooms, and prison stations, one phrase continues to echo like a curse. There's a reason humans were banned from the battlefield. Now we remember why.